This evening on the Rock Newman Show, we're joined by two giants in the African American expression of African culture. C.Brian Williams is the founder of Step Afrika, a phenomenal dance company that combines stepping to hip-hop flavored African beats. We're also joined by the legendary barber Melvin Deal, a renowned choreographer and founder of DC's African heritage dancers and drummers. Tonight, the alpha and omega of African dance and performance culture. That's coming up right now on the Rock Newman Show. Welcome to the Rock Newman Show from the campus of historic Howard University. I'm Rock Newman, and it is my desire to inspire you with personal stories of extraordinary achievement. Tonight, we're pleased to welcome two cultural icons to the program. C.Brian Williams, creator of Step Afrika, and barber Melvin Deal, founder of DC's renowned African dance, heritage dancers and drummers. Welcome to the show. The alpha and the omega, right?
Right. Thank you so much.
The beginning and the end, but we ain't ending yet, right?
No, by no means.
Melvin Deal, I've got to go to you first.
Yes, sir.
Where you've stated that that the interest in all things African was sparked on this side of the Atlantic by the twin engines of the civil rights movement and the anti-colonial movement in Africa. You care to expound on that for me, please?
Yeah, well, first let me give God thanks for allowing me to be here. I want to thank you for the show. And I want the listening audience to understand that everything that we do is a godsend. God sent me as an artist to educate our people, and in terms of the politics of it all, we have been, how can I say, used by God and the ancestors to bring an awareness to our people of things that they must do. In the early days of establishing African dance and music in the DMV and beyond, it was a perspective of constantly being asked by the European, do you have a pedagogy for what you do? Meaning, can you teach what you perform?
Yeah.
I said, oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
They said, you have a system of teaching that? Yeah. I said, yes, it's not just hollering and jumping up and down and banging on the drums. I said, we play the drum. We don't bang the drum, and we dance, and when we dance, our dancers tell a story.
And let me say for the listening audience who might not be aware, you started this 56 years ago.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Step Afrika is celebrating that's right, the 25th with an awesome play down at the Atlas Theater.
Yes, sir.
Man, I've got to say to folks, I can't tell you what to do, but if you knew what I knew, you'd go down there and see this play. I'm sorry. But yeah, so this was 56 years ago you started this.
Yes. So winning an understanding of the fact that there is a system for teaching this dance, then that validated the perspective of African dance in the city, because people did not want to accept you if you couldn't teach what you were performing. And of course you have to do considerable research. I've had to travel to Africa to verify research. I had to teach Africans coming here that they are somebody too, because slave mentality reached Africa as we know. It's about the same time our ancestors were being sent in ships over here. So it's a matter of lifting up the knowledge to build personhood. People say, what is personhood? A positive image of yourself. Many people who are black and some who are not have very negative images of themselves. They don't know where they came from, where their ancestors came from. They just meander.
Yeah.
They wander around looking for themselves. You ever see people walking back and forth? They're looking in every crack and cranny for themselves. You say, well, if you would, in fact, look in the mirror every morning and like what you see, okay, then you will find yourself. But they are too scattered with foolishness. Everything is pink. You gotta have blonde hair. You gotta have nails. You gotta have this. No, you got to have what? God and spirit and your ancestors and yourself in order to be a whole individual. So,
hallelujah.
Right. Tell me about it.
That's strong.
strong.
You know, that makes me stay with you. Brian, I'll be with you in
No,
just a second,
no,
man, because
please.
there's a whole lot to talk about. So let me ask you something. My beautiful black wife, when she hears the African drum beat nearly all the time, she has to be contained. There is something about an African drum beat that has her to behave in a way that she doesn't ordinarily behave. There is something that seems to be released. And at one point I thought, you know, maybe she's just kind of acting out, showing off or whatever. But I'm telling you, through the year, we've been married now 35 years. And there's something special that happens to her when she hears the beat of an African drum. What is it? She's at home right now watching this show, and she just jumped up off it, I can tell you.
The drum will call you. Your ancestors call you through the drum. You go to black people's churches, the minister is very sanctimonious, and the people in the church come dressed nicely, and everybody sits and they're correct. But as soon as the drummers come and start playing, hats go this way, pocketbook goes this way, shoes, carrying it. People say, oh, she's
Don't make
losing
me get up and step now like I'm over at Union Temple Baptist Church now.
Amen.
Feel free.
Hallelujah. You know, and they're doing the dances that their ancestors did. They are healing what? Themselves.
And they never saw the ancestors do it, but they're feeling.
They feel it, and it's still there. And there's a whole discussion that I have about gene echo. People say, what is gene echo?
Let's come back to that. Let's come back to gene echo.
Okay.
Ooh, don't forget. Let's come back to gene
I
echo.
want to hear that too.
Yes. So Brian.
Yes, sir.
You started Step Africa 25 years ago. This is you guys' 25th anniversary.
Yes, coming up in January.
You utilize what the fraternities and sororities have been doing, the stepping. You're a Howard man.
Howard graduate.
All right.
Proud Howard
Sitting here at Howard University right now.
Yes.
WHUT.
Yes.
What was it that attracted you to the stepping of the fraternities, sororities and fraternities, that led you to form Step Africa?
Well, also, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, and it's wonderful to sit here with this icon who I've watched for years in the dance world, and you've inspired me, so very glad to be here. And of course, your work has inspired me as well. So I guess I'm the young line, even though I'm not that young anymore, but Step Africa celebrates its 25th anniversary this year. And I graduated from Howard in 1990. I pledged a fraternity, an Alpha, member of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And it was there that I was introduced to this tradition of stepping. Even though my father went to Howard, my mother went to Fisk, and there's a long history of fraternities and sororities in the community, I didn't know a lot about fraternity and sorority culture when I got to Howard's campus. So I get here, I see stepping.
You grew up where?
Houston, Texas, born and raised.
Okay.
Yeah. Get to Howard, and I see the art form, and at that time, this is like I said, 1986, 1987, no one really considers stepping an art form. In fact, the people who practice it would not even say it's a dance form. We would just say it's a thing. In fact, I myself would say, I'm not dancing, I'm stepping. Very deliberate.
Sure.
But I get excited about the art form. I'm studying business at Howard University, School of Business, and I don't want to, I'm getting ready to graduate, and I'm really getting excited about the continent of Africa. And I'm studying the African continent up and down on my own time, and I had the idea that I wanted, instead of interviewing for a corporate job at the time, I wanted to move to the continent of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So I get my first fellowship to Southern Africa.
I'll tell you what, before you do that, before you talk about the fellowship there in Africa, something I want to tap into and say to some of my listening audience, viewing audience, in case they don't know, for example.
Right.
You can have a football game at I remember homecoming games at Howard. And there, at some point from 100 years ago, started the process of having step competition at the Armory. And I remember times that the excitement about the step competition amongst these black folks, amongst these African American folks, was as much, if not, there was more excitement than it was for the football game.
That's right.
I mean, that's very true, right?
That's true, yes.
And that spirit of the step show, where fraternities and sororities came together in this really incredible community to practice and compete on this tradition of stepping, is a really incredible African experience. So when I get to the continent of Africa, and I get a chance to take stepping for the first time to South Africa in 1991, which is before the end of apartheid officially in South Africa, I'm really excited about the opportunity to now bring these two cultures together. I started to recognize how African stepping is and was back then, and that there were some really underdeveloped ties that we needed to explore between the cultures there in hopes of bringing the people together. So really Step Africa was started as really to use the art form as a way to bring the cultures together. Hence Step Africa. Step meets the African continent, and that's why we call it Step Africa.
I already forgot the term you used.
Gene Echo.
Gene Echo.
Gene Echo, talk to me.
Yes, I'm ready for it.
We as black people are a poly people. We are not a monolithic people, meaning we are not one-sided. But we have poly rhythm, we have poly food, we have poly clothing, we have poly deities, we have poly spirits. And I also knew polyester many years ago, and she told me that because we are poly, we are more close to genius than we are not close to genius, which means that he and she who are poly are genius people. So this is why during slavery, the white people always wanted a black woman in their house in the kitchen because she could do many things at one time. Suckle the babies, she could cook the food, she could clean the house. All this is being done at one time. And the white lady is standing back saying, oh my God, Susie, how did you do all this? She said, sit down, lady, get out of my way, because I got work to do. But the fact is that genius is found in poly people, and that has been one of the things that has made people afraid who are not black, and some who are black, afraid of themselves, their own people, and their culture, because we are so powerful, because we are poly. We are many things.
It's interesting, we describe stepping as a percussive polyrhythmic art form.
Yes.
In terms of multiple, I didn't know that you used that term, but it is about multiple rhythms coming together.
I was going to ask you to please describe that.
Yeah. So stepping, in stepping we basically use our hands, our feet, and our body to make music. We know the tradition. But what Step Africa's been doing for the last 25 years is also trying to research where it comes from within the culture. And we found some really interesting things. In 1739, there was this, the Stoner Rebellion in South Carolina, where Africans used the drums as a means of insurrection. And they used a drum, probably a drum very similar here, to rally people, to communicate across broad distances and organize a resistance to the plantation owners, whatever, at that time. It was successful insurrection, eventually quelled or squashed or whatever. But as a result, it led to the Negro Act of 1740, and that's when Africans in the Americas lost the right to use the drum, lost the right to read, write, and assemble. But the drum is taken away from African culture. Because we always had this question, African Americans, and even as members of frats, where does stepping come from? And we would generically say it comes from the continent of Africa, but no one could say it came from West, or the people of Nigeria, Benin, Nigeria, or is it South? No questions. But we realized that it really is a direct response to African experience in the Americas. And so there's a long list of body percussive dance forms in the culture. Ring shout, ham bone, tap, and stepping, all stemming from really
Not
the
the boogaloo
drummer's
or
second.
Watusi, though.
Well, you know, I don't really know those really well. I know that's but you know, all these art forms, and those dance forms have tremendous connections to African movement, traditional African movement.
Yeah.
So if we really researched aggressively, we could find direct links.
You know, you say something, and as you sit there with the drum, and I think you have another one over there on the side, that Africans on this continent were prevented from having a drum. It was a form of communication that was understood by Africans who were brought here, but wasn't understood by those who brought them here. So it made it dangerous.
Yes, it was its own language.
Yes. In D.C., there's an ordinance on the law books that says no drumming can be done in public without a permit.
That's something now, right?
Today.
There's something that recently passed.
Malcolm X Park has drummers on Sunday,
Yes.
but there's a brother who walks around with a permit in his pocket in case the park police come and try to make everybody go away. You said, you mean to say that law? Yes, it's still on the books in D.C. There shall be no drumming in public without a permit.
Is it based
So let me ask you,
in,
is that something from far
slavery
bygone
time.
days?
From slavery time.
That is still on the books.
It's still on the books, and they have not.
Anybody got a phone? I can call down to the mayor's office right now.
Call the mayor's office, and you know, she'll sheepishly come and go, well, I didn't know that. Yeah, well, you should know it. But you can't drum in D.C. without a permit, okay? Now, the other side of that story is the perspective of understanding how African people use the drum to heal, as well as to establish hierarchies of understandings. Now, your name is Rock Newman. You are, as they say in the language, a big man.
That's what they say.
You know, you would have to adopt the manners of a big man in order to go where you go, because people just don't just mind and do things in small ways. They do them in big ways, which means that when the drummers come to bring you out, you would stand up. You would stand up. Let me see you stand up here.
I can't do it because I'm tied down with a whole bunch of stuff here.
But you would stand up and you would stand here several minutes, and people would say, well, what is he doing? They say, he's standing there. Well, why is he standing there? You are embracing your station. When I say embracing your station, a lot happens with oathing. A lot of oathing, telling people who you are, what you've done. Your name is Rock Newman. Your name is Brian. What's your last name? Williams. And I'm Melvin Deal. And people will come and they will tell your story in your face as you move slowly to where you're going. Why does that happen? Because they want people to know who you are and what you've done, and that's a motivation to you to do the right thing most of the time instead of the wrong thing. You don't want people saying bad things about you.
I follow you.
So you would stand and you look around, you'd wave at people, whatever, and you'd move a little bit. I remember seeing the Oni of Ife come to Odunde Festival in Philadelphia. It took him a half hour to get out of the car and go to his throne. People said, what is he doing? The praise singers were singing. The drums were playing, the bells were playing, the rattles were playing. The people were carrying on. Why? Because of the great deeds that he has done.
Okay, let me ask you something. Because this issue of not being able to play a drum in public in Washington, D.C., there was controversy a year or so ago about people who were doing go-go. And also go-go music. Is there a tie there? Is there a connection?
It's Yoruba music. It's Shango music.
Itself, huh?
Yes, Shango music from the deity of lightning, thunder, and fire known as Shango. And the agogo bell, word agogo means making music, to make music, was revealed to young people in the school system in '68 when I was doing workshops and stuff coming from Africa and doing all those workshops. They learned the agogo bell and that it meant to make music or entertainment. So what they did is went out on the lots and got junk because they couldn't afford instruments, and they made a junkyard band.
Man. Yes.
I knew where you were going.
And the junkyard, I have footage for 1972 when I asked the go-go people, how did you make up your rhythms? And they told me how they made the rhythms and the movements and the dance.
Right.
From the go-go bell or a glass gin bottle, a soda bottle, a piece of metal, whatever.
Yeah.
A bucket.
Okay?
Yeah,
A bucket,
a wash machine.
sheetrock bucket, okay? So you get go-go coming out of Nigerian music and Nigerian dance. Then, of course, the whole idea of identification again, where when you go to a go-go concert, they call your area Southeast is here,
you represent,
Northwest is here, you know, calling the names of individuals who are influential in their continuance, okay? So people say, you know, I just can't get with that. Well, you can't get with it because you don't know how to be real. You have to be real to be a go-go enthusiast.
Yeah.
You can't be phony and stuck up and, you know, just, you know, feeling unnecessary.
You know,
let go.
I said privately and publicly,
Yes.
one of the freest places on the planet
Yes, sir.
was at a Chuck Brown concert.
Hello.
Yes, and I had nieces that used to be up in there and
Banging
was
it
not
out.
offended when they said Felicia got a big old, Chuck Brown said, Felicia got a big old.
Oh yeah.
That's
you know,
right.
There was freedom there, man.
Yeah.
You know what?
Do
There
in
was
public.
There was
Yeah.
freedom
In private.
there, and there was a camaraderie there that you suspended the issues of this world, and you just got down to the beat.
Well, the interesting about go-go in terms of not being from here, you talk about your wife in particular when she hears the beats, the drums,
Lose her
how she
whole
responds. I have watched that same dynamic happen here in DC.
Yes.
When they hear go-go, and it is really specific to DC. in terms
Indigenous.
of- it is clearly
People
indigenous,
music.
and it's amazing how DC owns that and has created that and has really nurtured it for all these years.
Yeah.
And when you come into the city, you really see how much the people own and celebrate the tradition and what it does to them, which is
The proverb is, do in public what is forbidden in private. Okay, what does that mean? That in the village, if you want to show it, shake it, move it, flip it, whatever.
Drop
you
it.
Do it, drop it.
Like
Do
it's
it
hot.
drop it like it's hot. Do it in public. Because when you retire to be out of the public's eye, then all the restraints come into play, which means that the mores and the ethics of the people, in terms of their goodness and fidelity, is found in the hidden perspective. The Europeans went to Africa, and by day they were pious. But boy, when the sun went down, they went crazy over those white African people. So I'm saying that doing public what is forbidden in private keeps you sane, and it makes you behave yourself.
And avoids hypocrisy, doesn't
And
it?
it avoids hypocrisy, but we live, you know, in hypocrisy. But the reality is do in public what is forbidden in private, and that's what initiation is all about.
So, Brian,
Yeah.
I want to. Have you guys ever sat together on a show
No,
like this?
and you know, I've sat at his feet, and I've been to his concerts and his performances, but you know,
Because I want to ask you, you tapped into right away saying it avoids hypocrisy.
yes.
What prompted that?
Well, that proverb is heavy. I wish I was able to write down my own notes while while we're doing this. But I mean, that's a good question. I really responded to when the public, you know, how you behave in public and being free to do exactly what you feel in public versus having to constantly put these veneers up and pretend, as we see a lot of individuals doing, especially sometimes in our political life, is a huge concept that I'm dealing with right now. Actually, so I probably
So Melvin, you early on were a Boy Scout,
Yes.
and you dealt with Native American culture.
Lori, they call it Lori dancing. Native American, and it was in the Boy Scout manual. If you get a Boy Scout manual between 1959 and 1969, the older manual will include for merit badges Indian Lorry dancing. And they had the steps and the rhythm that was used by certain local Native Americans to do rain dances, harvest dances, death, funerals, marriages, war, all those dances. I learned those dances to get merit badges.
As a Boy Scout.
As a Boy Scout. So my interest in ethnic, as they called it back then, ethnic or primitive, dancing continued. So using books and tapes, and then finding some willing students at Howard from Africa who was willing to teach me what they knew.
Right.
Then I began to piece African heritage together, and then of course traveling to Africa and studying in universities and in the villages and whatever, I was able to recreate a lot of the culture that I was able to find there. And you asked me earlier about my sojourn with masquerades. I've done quite a bit of research for masquerades, but the masquerade situation is so powerful.
It is.
In terms of a clan. When an elder in your family dies, you commission a masquerade. And the masquerade, after several months, comes around to check on everyone in the society, to take care of the children, to take care of the elders. Now, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, the masquerade will point its finger in your face and says, I am the ruling elder spirit here, and if you don't do right, I'm gonna kick you behind. Okay, so people don't want the mumbo jumbo. You know, the mumbo jumbo is a real masquerade. People say, don't put a mumbo jumbo on me. The mumbo jumbo is 10 feet tall on stilts. He wears a long overcoat. He has a straw head, look like a scarecrow. And he has red eyes, and he will come and he'll knock on your door and says, you ain't doing right by your children.
So Mama Jumbo, an authority figure.
Yes, an authority figure.
So let me ask you. Step Africa promotes stepping as an educational tool for young folks, focusing on teamwork, academic achievement, and cross-cultural understanding.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain that?
Well, ever since we began, we started as this festival in Johannesburg, South Africa. The idea was to use stepping as a way to motivate and inspire young children. So when we started, that was the first thing that we were doing, is teaching children, using stepping as a way to really encourage them and connect them to college and other things that we thought were good messages to share. Since then, Step Africa serves about 25,000 students every year in the DC area alone. And when you add that up over the 25 years, it's been a lot of people that we have worked with. And we've done projects all across the continent of Africa, a lot in Europe, South and Central America, Asia. And I think for the next 25 years, there's a lot more places for us to go. Because
so can you lift up a story or two of individuals who might have performed, who might have, your organization got involved, you touched their lives, and you see a tangible sense of how it made a difference?
Well, there's so many I could think about, and what I like in particular is we created this program called Summer Steps with Step Africa. It's like the world's first opportunity camp to teach the tradition of stepping. And we've seen our kids basically come in at 8 years old, and they step all the way with us to high school. Many of those have gone on to college. And I think because for Step Africa, education's critical. And we've seen a lot of our young people do that. But there's one young man in South Africa who I'm especially proud about. His name is Vusi Mdoye, and he came to the South Africa Festival when we were doing it in Johannesburg in 1994, late 1900s, late 1990s. And that young boy took those lessons that we did about preserving and documenting your culture, studying it aggressively so you know it very, very well, and then start to share it with the world. So he's now one of the leading Pantsula artists in the world, traveling all over the world. And it started at our training with him in South Africa in the early 1990s. So, but I think there are a lot of stories of that. Our artists that we have in the company, they come from colleges all across the country, and now they're teaching and performing. And
you speak 1994 South Africa.
Yes, sir.
which is the year that Nelson Mandela became the president. They finally got one man, one vote. And you saw the people lined up for hours and hours and hours in the hot boiling sun to exercise that vote. And then the elation afterwards when he was declared the winner.
Yes.
And I remember, I just so profoundly remember seeing the stepping that they did and the dust flying. It was a form of
the toy and the songs that they sing in Southern Africa.
Yeah.
Quite powerful. I was actually there when Mandela was campaigning in this January through April of 1994. And Step Africa started 6 months after his election. And the spirit of the people after the election and the way of Soweto in particular. Soweto before the election and Soweto after, it was like two different worlds. It was like a huge cloud had been taken off of the call. And you know, in next year, South Africa celebrates its 25th anniversary. It's also 25th anniversary of that election, of the election of President Nelson Mandela. So, and this year, of course, was his 100th birthday of Mandela.
So, Melvin, coming out of the Boy Scouts, learning the Native American steps and traditions, what was it that led you towards the African experience in drumming and dance?
One of my first dance teachers was Bernice Hammond Jackson, God rest her soul. And she told me that the only real legitimate form of dancing was European ballet. So when she told me that, I said, no ma'am. I said, I know that my people have contributed a lot to dance, and you can't tell me that I won't make it unless I do ballet. She says, no, if you don't do European ballet, you're not gonna make it in the dance world.
Oh boy.
So I said, okay. So I was entering Howard 1960, going, to university, continuing research and so forth. And over the years, my successes have been due to perseverance, of course, but people who wanted other people to see that young people who were challenged or at risk could in fact find something to do in the community that would lift them up. I'll give you a good example. I was asked earlier today, how do you recruit your students? Well, we would just open the door of the studio and drum. And kids would come in like Pied Piper. And they would say, can we be a part of your program? I said, of course. Then somebody would say, those are bad kids. I said, those are the ones we want. Because we can take them off the street, make them behave themselves, turn them into wonderful drummers, wonderful dancers. We have students everywhere. Everywhere you go and say, Melvin Deal, oh, I was in the class of blankety blank blank, and we went here and we did this, so forth and so on. So the situation got down to having people understand that yes, we are a people with a culture. Yes, we can teach what we do. Yes, we can do research and find out that the culture that we're studying has relevance to us today. And that's another very important aspect of what I do, is making what's today relevant to people's utility, such as Kwanzaa. A lot of people still don't understand what Kwanzaa is about. The words, the Swahili words are alien to them. The candles and the values, it's just a mystery. And I tried to get them to understand that Ron Karenga had in mind a value system that would help lift our people out of the commercial doldrums, if you will, of spending all your money at holiday time and not really having any value.
Get away from the symbolism within and introduce some substance.
Some substance, exactly. So it is a life, even after 56 years in the community, it is a life that is continuous in terms of teaching the parallels. We're even teaching continental Africans who come here and want to know, why do you want to do that? We don't want to do those old dances and wear those old clothes.
That leads me right into, to Brian. Your statements of African traditional dance and influences form a variety of other dance and art forms. Performances are much more than dance shows. they integrate songs, storytelling, humor, and audience participation. So when you guys are rocking this Atlas Theater, and folks, I can't tell y'all what to do, but if you know what I know, you would go see Step Africa. You'd go see Step Africa.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what are you trying to achieve
Yeah.
with this show that you've put together?
It really is our way of bringing people together.
Okay.
You know, we built this show. It's called Step Africa's Magical Musical Holiday Step Show, and
Say that
we
again.
built Step Africa's Magical Musical Holiday Step Show.
Okay.
Right, and we built this show in the round, and we did that because we wanted everyone to be able to connect with the artist in very different ways. You know, traditional African dance is always done in the round. Stepping on the college campus is done in the round.
In the round.
Right?
Right.
So for us to perform in the round, I think it makes sense for us as a company and as a culture. And what that means is we try to constantly break the boundary between artists and audience. So it becomes invisible. We really are trying to connect with the audience throughout the show, make music with the show. You know, when you come to the performance, you aren't just sitting there passively. We want you to interact with the artist, have a good time, and this show has become one of our most popular because that happens at pretty much every moment of the performance.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like the nonstop energy, man.
Right.
Is indeed something that
life.
brings folks together.
It's life.
Yeah. Stepping to me, it kind of reminds us of what we were trying to recapture what was lost. The drum is gone, taken away, so therefore we found stepping, this polyrhythmic percussive dance form. If you listen to it if you just listen to stepping, don't even watch it, it's replicating the sounds of djembes, of drum ensembles all across the continent, but it's in the body of the people. It's the drum folk. And that's who Step Africa. That's why I think Step Africa is so unique. On in the performing arts world today.
Yeah, you know, as I reflect back of times of being on campus, and you know, just my focus was athletics.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but there was something that, however it happened, and sometimes it was very spontaneous.
Right.
Sometimes it was planned, but sometimes it was spontaneous.
Yes.
Lunch was over with.
Right.
And you saw the cues
on the yard
doing what they was doing over here.
Exactly.
Right.
So over here, the alphas had to start to get down.
And then the AKAs
and
would
then the
join
Kappas
in.
over here. And then, so, you know, absolutely the AKAs had to jump in. And then the Deltas had to jump in.
Right.
And you saw a body of people.
All these different tribes.
Yeah, all the tribes. And you saw sort of the non-participants going from one place to the other, sort of with a zeal.
When you say Baba Deal, that's a even though it might not have been intentionally African, it's probably, in terms of African American culture, is one of the most African expressions.
You have to be in a village where they have a Durbar. Durbars when different tribes come together. Where you have this tribe over here with their music, this tribe, this tribe, this tribe. You say, well, how do they play their music while everybody else is playing their music and they don't get distracted? From the time you are conceived until the time you are born, you are hearing the rhythm of your people. If you are an Ewe, if you are a Yoruba, if you are an Akan, all these are names of family groups or tribal groups, you know your rhythm. If you hear a rhythm that goes, that's Ghana, Akan, moving the body, okay? So the idea is that we are one big family. Even though we are individual tribes, we are one big family, and we can come together and build up a crescendo. You've never seen, how can I put it, a Durbar where all the chiefs come together. All the gold and the kente cloth and whatever. I was in Ghana where they installed, Pokoware. His icon was a turtle. They covered him in gold ingots made like turtle shells, and they couldn't walk. They had to carry him to the coronation area. All right, there were thousands. You never seen so many black people in your life. All these black people, you know, where did they? You never knew it was that many black people on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
But they come together. They know that they are one family. And this is what we're trying to get people in America to do of color. Not just African descent, but Hispanic, Afro-Hispanic, Afro-Caribbean, Afro whatever. To understand that we are what? One family.
Yeah.
On the 26th of December, we will be at 1816 12th Street for our Kwanzaa.
Yeah.
If you would like to come, it's open to the public. We're doing it with the Ethiopian community, and it's called Genna, which is the Ethiopian Christmas. We're having Genna as well as Kwanzaa. So it's open to the public. You can come. That's on the 26th of December at 6 in the evening. If you want to get a seat, come early.
I had a conversation with Muhammad Ali. And I told him that 1974 was my senior year at Howard University. And how incredibly important it was that when I watched him at the Rumble in the Jungle, as it was called, in Kinshasa, Zaire, and for him to come out of that ring victorious against the prediction of all the experts. And he said at the time, his voice had started to go, not like it was at the end. He said, I said, man, how did you do that? And he said, the people lifted me. He said, George came there with the German Shepherd. And the German Shepherd was a symbol of Belgium and colonialism. And the people didn't like that. So they weighted George down, but they lifted me up, and the people made me win.
Right? That's right.
And somewhere hearing you guys describe what the rhythm and what the drum and what the connection and the gene memory and what those people were feeling and how happy they were. Ali, Boombaye, Ali, Boombaye. And so, man, what I'm feeling, when he said that, I listened, it was like, okay. But I'm hearing something here now that makes me understand what he said 30 years ago a lot more than I ever did, because how he must have felt with that spirit and that lifting, and how the weight that it must have been on Foreman, that by the time this 8th round comes around, in addition to Ali popping you in your face, you've got all of this energy. Fascinating.
Step Afrika performed in Haiti about 4 years ago. It was several years after the devastation. And there 10,000 people came out. And that performance is one of my favorite moments in the history of the company, because it was, and they broadcast it for weeks after we left, and it was just this surgence of the people coming out and just really pushing the artists to perform and connect with them in really creative ways. And Haiti is a very special country. I'm angling to get back there. Its history is so unique, but you're right. And I think the arts, what we do in the arts is, and we need to do it even more aggressively, is we bring the people together, and because of the art forms that we represent, we're really trying to always lift up the community. I think that's always a part
Let me add, because, man, I'm telling you, it keeps dovetailing. It just keeps dovetailing very naturally. There's something special going on here. So you say that African dance and what the African heritage dancers and drummers bring to DC is the power to free your mind and your body. How did you first come to that place where you began to define your personal worldview based on Africanness?
By being able to will into existence that which was necessary for survival and awareness. People say, will it into existence.
That's a mouthful.
I want the listening audience to choose something they want, and I want them to will it into existence in a 7-day period. I want you to speak to the universe speak to God and speak to your ancestors and say, this is what I require. This is what I want. I will do this or that or the other to make this phenomena manifest and watch it happen.
While you're saying that, there are some people out there that might be looking at it and saying, what's this hocus pocus stuff they're talking? Well, what it is this extraordinarily similar. I don't want to say it's nothing different, but it's very similar to what your masters, Wayne Dyer and Chopra, Deepak Chopra, talk about
willing.
when they're talking about willing something into existence.
Yes.
Whatever you want, ask the universe first, because man usually is not able to give you what you want. Men are flawed and they're selfish in some instances, but God does not have a vested interest because he owns you anyway. All right? So therefore, if you ask God in the universe, according to God's will, and according to the way God wants to use you to do good, he will say, I will grant this to you, and I will also, in addition, grant what you want, but I will grant the understanding of how it is to be used. And that's what we have as artists, as to how we use our power and our awareness and our spirituality to do.
Not just entertain.
Not just entertain. We're not entertainers. We're edutainers.
Yes, and so Brian, look, man, someone would think, sort of the way this is flowed, and we rehearsed this. And of course we did not. But here's where I am now. Right after what he just said there was to get to the point where you say you promote an appreciation for stepping and its use as an educational, motivational, and healthy tool for young people.
Right.
Explain.
Well, I mean, for me, I used to think a long time when I was young. You know, a lot of young people don't have access, or don't have the proper access, or easy access, I should say, to really learn about their culture. So you have to be very aggressive outside of the classroom in order to get some of the lessons that Melvin Deal is talking about. And, you know, even for me to do the work on stepping, I had to really go beyond what was written and kind of create it myself because it was not there. And what I discovered along the way is that knowledge of your culture doesn't make you like this. It really makes you more open to connect and communicate on an equal basis with everybody. So I've been really an advocate of cultural exchange, of course, but also cultural understanding. So for our young people, we want them to see their culture as something positive, to see the endless artistic and creative possibilities that they have within themselves, and then use that as whatever they wish in the world around them. And this is really all cultures. You know, South Africa has, of course, been in South Sudan 6 months after that country opened, teaching the children and connecting with the culture there. But we've also been in Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Albania, performing and using stepping as a way to connect those cultures. And we were done it in Lebanon and so many other places. So I really feel that our culture, if we really know it and understand it and study it, and I know Baba Deal has done this, we can then share it freely and see what happens. I just wish it happened more often.
So let me ask you, so to do some of the things that you're talking about, it obviously takes funding.
Yes, it does.
How do you where do you get the gas to put in the tank?
Well, you know, that's Howard University School of Business. So I got to say thank you to Howard University. But because I have always thought, I mean, artists have a certain responsibility, but I love when artists are able to work in tandem with other organizers, business people. And I think that's why I've been able to be successful business-wise, is because I really have focused on bringing in the skill sets I didn't have. Like, I don't know a lot about human resources. And I took an accounting class, but I don't know a lot about accounting. So I had to bring these people in to help me build an organization to where now Step Afrika is one of the largest African-American dance companies in the world today. It's been an interesting journey with 14 full-time dancers and the hard work it takes to sustain that type of work. I mean, but we work at it every day, and it's a very, I mean, it's a life work.
Back to you, Melvin. There's been the question put forth to you as to why it is that you haven't, with the kind of success you've had, the kind of reputation that you have developed, why it is that you've not attempted to take what you do, to take your dancers to Broadway.
The urgency to save my people is greater than my desire for fame. I'll say that again. The urgency to save my people is greater than my desire for fame, which means that Broadway is definition from another people's culture. When I am walking the streets of Washington in every crack and cranny and can hear children and adults and grandmas and granddaddies call my name, that is my reward. Not going to Broadway. I never wanted to go to Broadway because I didn't want Broadway to validate me. He who owns the definition owns the power. I own my own definition, and I'm here to serve my people until I'm going to the spirit world, which means that I don't look to other men for validation. I look to God and ancestors. So that means that you're not trying to run around, find validation from Tom, Dick, Harry, Jane, and Sue, and Keisha. You're not trying to do that. You're trying to serve the people who need you the most. And we need only look at TV and the newspaper to see the number of our people who are dying every day because of a lack of knowledge of self and culture and who they really are. And what I do is needed more than ever now.
Yes, it is.
Because it's good that Step Africa goes around the world. That's your assignment. But African Heritage assignment is in the communities in Washington, D.C. And we make ourselves satisfied with that, and we don't feel any the less for our work with those who are the least of these.
And that's so important to say. I mean, I think we have so many different roles to play to do this work, you know? And even though that has been a focus of Step Africa in terms of performances, not just in DC, but around the world, you know, I recognize that I'm able to do what I do because of the work that Melvin Deal did, that Hassan Kante has done, that Andrew Castro, and there's so many. DC used to be replete, full of traditional African dance companies, and a lot has changed. A lot has changed, but Melvin Deal is still here, and I think this reminds me that we have to perpetually honor the people who started this work and have allowed me to take it. Like I'm super excited about the next generation of Step Africa and other artists of what they're going to do. There's based on what he has done, what I'm trying to do. Now let's see what else happens.
You know, there are macro examples, there are micro examples of what you do and the impact that you have. Thousands of people, each of you guys have touched. That's that's macro. The micro is the kid who you talked about, who now is in South Africa, who's leading stuff. And another example of the micro, since we're sitting here in Washington, D.C., I'll bring up, oftentimes folks who don't really understand, and you kind of got to say, well, that's a DC thing. You wouldn't understand. But some people ask the question because of the imagery, the negative imagery that was portrayed of the mayor for life, Marion Barry. They don't understand his DC-ness. And part of his DC-ness, when he went down into the belly of the whale and came up out of that hellhole of a personal turmoil and tragedy and trials, and decided that he wanted to try to come back and return to having value to the community. Part of what he did is he got married. And he got married at Union Temple Baptist Church. And he chose this man right here to perform the music of his wedding. So that's a micro example of a respect that a leader has, who extraordinarily imperfect, but an appreciation for what you've been trying to do. And you know, your commentary about the urgency of saving your people is much greater than the need to try to be validated by someone else's opinion is something that I'm sure Marion touched. You remember that day? We've got 1 minute left. You remember that day back in 1994?
Yes. And it's a perspective of understanding that Marion was a village man. He was a man from the village. And he did everything he could for the people in his village. So now that he is an ancestor, we pour libation to him. And we make masquerades for him, and we dance for him. See, same way we do for Babatunde Olatunji. Many people forget about him. Babatunde Olatunji caused the laughing and dance groups to spring up all over the country. Everywhere. Everybody knew Funga. Everybody do stick dance, whatever. Now I'm using Funga Lafia. It's Kwanzaa Lafia. Ashe, Ashe. Kwanzaa Lafia, Ashe, Ashe.
So, folks, I can't tell you what to do, but if you knew what I know, you'd go down to the Atlas Theater and get some tickets to see what Step Afrika is doing, and may you last another 56 years, my dear brother. Both of you, thank you so much for joining me here today. God bless you. That's our show for this evening, folks. For more information on this program or any other program produced by WHUT, go to WHUT.org. Goodbye. May God bless and
This program was produced by WHUT, Howard University Television, and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.